So welcome to tonight's Scorpio yoga class. Scorpio rules the sexy parts of the body, the pelvis, the bladder, the excretory parts of the body. And when it's in balance, it's very investigative and curious. When it's out of balance, Scorpio energy can be really suspicious and it also has this sort of mystical element because there's sort of it's the like not seen part, right? We tend to cover up this part of our body because it's very personal to us. And you could use that figuratively to think about, anything that's underground or anything that we don't see, like sewers and wells and holes in the floor, the basement, So Scorpio is like the basement of your house. Sometimes you put things in there so you don't have to look at them. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. All right, I'll finish with all the analogies. That's all to say that we all have Scorpio energy because we all have a pelvis and this part of our body. But that doesn't mean you necessarily were born under the sign of Scorpio. Some of you may have more of that connection to that energy. And the reason why I like connecting the body with astrology is it makes it really relevant to me. And if you think about it, if we were to do all 12 signs, we'd get all the body parts. So you're taking care of each of those body parts in a very intentional way. So that is my hope for today. And what's interesting about the pelvis is like it doesn't really have a lot of movement by itself, right? Like your legs can move that part of you for you, right? But it doesn't really have a lot of movement. Like the neck can move, right? It can do things. It turns the head, the shoulders, the arms, there's mobility. This is a very like fixed area of the body. There is a little bit of movement that's available, but not a whole lot. So we'll play with different movements that just bring awareness to that area. And I'll invite you to do a little dance later if you're at home alone or you don't care if there's anybody watching. But my hope is that we just bring in a little extra energy and love to this part of our body that we often cover up and try to forget about, except maybe once a year when we go to the lady doctor. And as one of my friends used to tell me, a squat a day keeps the lady doctor away. So we will be doing some squats today, including goddess pose. But to get started, let's start in a comfortable seat, whatever that means for you. And you might notice your sits bones and your pelvis and the way it's arranged here in your seat. And when you're sitting, I'm just gonna bring the camera down so you can see. If you want to take your hands around the sides of your waist and get your strut on and actually tilt your pelvis forward and backward a few times, and just to be aware of that motion that is available. And again, your pelvis is not moving itself. It's the muscles above and below, and then the legs and hips that are actually doing this for you, right? And just notice how it feels when you're curled back and your pelvis is tilted and you're kind of rounded into yourself. Notice how when you tip it forward, you might feel a little bit like you're arching. And your body knows how to do all of these things in between too, right? So there's nothing wrong with any of these positions. The question is, where do you feel most comfortable in your seat? And comfort, as well as like, where do you feel like the energy in yourself feels just right, like everything's lined up, if you will. And I don't mean just the bones, I mean you feel lined up with yourself. Like when we're standing tall, it feels very different than when we're crouched and hunched over. So notice here especially where your pelvis is in space and how it holds the rest of your upper body up. If you're comfortable, you're welcome to close the eyes and tune in. And if your hands are still around your hips, that's great. You can also bring them sort of lower to the lower belly, just inside the groin, like you're holding that low belly part of your body. And as you breathe naturally here, Remember that there's nothing fancy you need to do with your breath. In fact, try to take light breaths, not necessarily bigger ones. And as you breathe, especially if you have your hands at the low belly, notice if you feel a little bit of movement as you inhale and exhale. Your torso expanding to make space for your breath. Even all the way down into this low belly and pelvic area. Notice if you're holding this low belly or pelvic area tight. As women, especially, we tend to tighten our bellies in and suck things in a lot. See if you can feel comfortable letting it rest in your hands. You might even almost guide your breath or visualize your breath reaching down into your low belly and pelvis. And send some loving kindness or healing Reiki energy through your hands to this area of your body. Nice. When you're ready, you can take the hands perhaps to the lap. Feel free to keep the eyes closed if that's cozy. And start to round into yourself, making a cat back in your seated position. And then lift the chest slightly, arch forward, maybe squeeze the shoulder blades together behind you. If it feels okay, lift the chin. And then round into yourself, curling up. And go back and forth a few more times between the rounded cat and the arched cow. Nice. Then come back up to neutral. Walk the right hand out a bit and lean to that side, making a side bend for your left side body. Feel free to bring the left arm with you if that feels good, or start to make a circle in the air. If you've been gardening this weekend, perhaps you feel that in the arms and the hands as you stretch out the fingers and the palm. You can go in both directions. And then make your way over to the other side. Arch to the left, maybe take your right arm with you. Add movement if you like, or stay in the arched position. And then make your way back up to sit, uncross the legs if you have them crossed, recross them so that they're the funky way. And then walk your hands out in front of you any amount. So it's almost like a child's pose variation. Lean any amount forward. And then walk the hands up and back behind you. Separate the feet wide so you can twist the knees from left to right a few times. And the next time your knees fall to the right, go ahead and walk your hands around to the back behind you, coming into a variation of a restorative twist. So if we had a whole bunch of pillows, you could cuddle with them. But here, even just for a few moments, maybe with the hands down, you can press into the floor and imagine a little extra length through the sides of your waist. If it feels like too much twisting, you can bring the knees closer together. Some of you may be comfortable bringing one or maybe both elbows to the ground. And then when you're ready to do the same to the other side, walk yourself around, let the knees fall to the left, twist all the way around to the other side, pause with your hands resting on the ground. And if there's space or desire, you can bring yourself a little closer to the ground. And then walk yourself back up and around. Beautiful. And with the soles of the feet together, the knees wide. Butterfly pose or Baddha Konasana, bound angle. So you're welcome to hold the ankles or the shins. You can stay upright or lean forward. Notice this diamond-like shape here that you make with the legs. Make your way back up, escort the legs together and give them a shake out in front of you. And come around onto your hands and knees. Feel free to swag or wag your tail, shifting the hips and pelvis from side to side. You might lean to one side and let that side of the waist hang over closer to the floor, and then bring yourself up and over and sink to the other side. Let the knees and feet come along for the ride. One more time to each side. And then steady yourself on hands and knees, curl your toes under, and perhaps press your hips up and back for downward facing dog pose. Big stretch for the back body. And especially if you've been doing anything other than this move today, you might be feeling some feelings. So walk around, press one heel to the floor, bend the opposite knee, and switch sides a few times as if to walk your dog, as we sometimes say. And then pause in neutral, where you feel all 4 points connecting to the earth, bend your knees quite a bit and lift your hips towards the sky. So instead of feeling like you're straightening the legs, start with bent knees and then lift the hips as if someone's up there pulling on your tailbone. Feel your low belly, the hips, the pelvis area, like reaching up to the sky. We're essentially sticking our bums in the air. So have a little laugh. If you can imagine witnessing yourself from a distance. And then turn this into a very slow tiptoe. And imagine watching your bum, your pelvis wag from side to side as you walk towards your hands. Another little chuckle, perhaps. Starting to work some of our sexy muscles until you get to a standing forward bend. Feel free to stay up halfway if that makes you feel dizzy to fold all the way. And if you want, grab opposite elbows and let the torso hang. Spend a few moments here. And then bend your knees a lot. Walk your hands to the tops of your thighs so you're holding yourself up. And arch the back slightly like a standing cow pose. And then round into standing cat. We are moving the spine back and forth, but you are also essentially doing those pelvic tilts that we started with from our seated position. Nice. Next time you're rounded, go ahead and roll yourself up to stand. Feel free to sweep the arms out and up overhead. And then bring the hands together at your heart. Take one hand to the heart, one hand to the low belly, and connect with those 2 energy centers, those 2 points of major intuition, that sort of gut feeling that we get, this inner sense, as well as the heart. And thank your inner knowing, your higher self, for bringing you to your mat today. And then when you're ready, open the eyes, release, take the feet wide and start to swing the arms around. Watch out for any walls or furniture for a standing twist. And then we're gonna practice moving our sexy muscles. Next time you're turning to the left, turn this into a hip circle. So move your pelvis around and around as if you're tracing the inside of a hula hoop. And you can make this faster. See if your arms even would rather be up in the air. A little bit of a dance move here, right? And then go the other way. If you want to keep your arms low, that's fine. Take it at whatever speed feels good. But notice if you do have your hands in the air, how different the energy is, right? Than like this slow hip roll, which I love. You guys know I do this every day. But with the arms in the air, does it feel more freeing, more fun, more silly, awkward, perhaps? All right. Awesome. Thanks for playing. Slow it down, shake out the legs. And then with the feet any distance apart, we're going to change the distance several times, but start wherever you feel comfortable. Start to bend your knees and sit back into an imaginary chair. Now take your hands alongside your body so they're kind of running the same direction as your trunk, your torso, and reach the fingers back. Some people call this the thunderbolt style of chair pose or thunderbolt pose. And then push into the floor and rise up. And then bend your knees again, sink into your squat. essentially what chair pose is a squat, right? So come up and out and back in a few times. And then the next time you're standing straight, change something about your feet. It could be the turning out of the foot, it could be the distance, or it could be both. And then sit back into your imaginary chair again. And you can sit and hold. Notice how it feels to squat. I kind of like this wider stance personally. You can see how it feels for you. And as you come up to stand, notice that you can kind of stop when you're straight, or you can kind of shift your pelvis forward a little bit. It may not feel great for some of you, but you may actually enjoy that, or not mind it, I should say. It's almost like you're sinking back, and then you're taking a little arch. If you prefer to move with the arms, so that when you're upright and shifting your pelvis forward, your arms come up and over with you, standing back bend, you can try that. Don't make yourself dizzy, so slow the movement down. Maybe you go much slower than you imagine. And maybe you stay in the squat for a little bit. Maybe you lift up and arch back for a little bit. Nice. And then change something about your feet. Again, I'm going to go wide, but feet trying to be parallel, which is really awkward for me, but I'm going to try it. See if you want to turn your feet out. And same thing, you can add the swing of the arms if you like it, or you can take the hands to the hips, or you can keep them by your side. Just notice. And if shifting the pelvis, you don't have to make this a big move. I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but just play with what feels good here. All right, now you've had a couple different experiments with the distance between the legs. Pick the one that feels best for you to sit into a squat for a little while. Now you can take your arms in whatever direction makes that possible. I have my feet a little wider and my arms out like I'm hugging an imaginary beach ball. Nice. Notice the heat starting to build. You decide the height of your chair. And then press your way up. If it feels good to do an arch back to counter that, awesome. Ah, beautiful. Now step really wide for a goddess pose squat. So here we turn the toes out quite a bit and bend the knees. For most people, this feels pretty stable, but we're going to add a little swing to it. So you can have your hands on your hips if you like and make it a small move. You can go a little bit more fun and flirty with your hands. But what I want you to just be aware of is that your pelvis, this whole area in the middle here, can move. When we sit here in this goddess pose, it doesn't have to be static. It can move. So play with, do your hips move side to side? Does your pelvis move left to right? Does it move a little forward and back, like those pelvic tilts? Yep. You do you, you're at home, so it's your level of comfort. I'm not watching. And then maybe put it all together, make a little circle. Now we're really on the dance floor. Now the hard part, go the other way. There's usually one way that feels natural and then you go the other way and it feels less natural. I don't think Nori's on the call live here, but she's our dance guru. All right, straighten the legs, give your legs a little break. Whew, walk the feet together. Hopefully that was a little fun, but your legs are probably a little bit tired. All right, let's change it up slightly. Take a wide stance, but turn towards your left toes and bend that knee. So you're in like a warrior two style lunge. And then with the hand on the thigh or the elbow on the thigh, side angle pose. Maybe you add your arm and sweep it up and over. Feel the side body stretch to the right. And then perhaps straighten your left arm and bring the hand a little closer to the floor. If it doesn't get there, that's okay. You can hang out right here. Right hand can always come to the hip. But if you can, maybe you reach for the ground. Even with your fingertips, notice what that feels like to connect with the earth. Sometimes you feel more feelings in the hips and that lower belly, the inner legs. Nice. And then maybe you bring both hands to the floor. Now this could get awkward, so however you want to get there is fine, but we're going to walk over to the other side. So you might have to turn your left toes in, and when you get to the right side, turn your right toes out, and you've effectively crawled to the other side of your mat. And now we'll do that in reverse. Your right hand is close to the floor as is, right? So maybe open up for side angle pose, or bring your left hand to your hip. If you want to come up already onto the thigh, that's also fine. And since we're getting a little lower to the ground, we're getting a little bit more into the hips and thighs, you might feel your breath a little bit more, a little bit warmer. So try as best you can to breathe in and out through the nose. Power through the legs, come up a little higher. Maybe your elbow rests on your thigh now, or maybe the hand rests there for side angle, Prasarita Tanasana. Excuse me, I said that totally wrong. That's a different Sanskrit name. And the real one is escaping me. All right, press up into your Virabhadrasana 2, Warrior 2 shape. It's always harder coming up than it is to go down. And then straighten your leg, give it a break. Whew. Turn the toes in so the feet are parallel. If you like me, you got a little long on your mat, you can walk the feet closer together. And then we will take Prasarita Padottanasana, which means standing wide angle forward fold. So from here, if you want to go halfway, you can. Feel free to bend your knees, stay halfway. You can hold the thighs or reach towards the floor or maybe to blocks. And let your head hang down. Notice the inner legs. Notice the backs of the legs. And notice how the sides of your waist feel long and like they're doing the same thing together, right? Now within this shape, there's a little movement available for your pelvis. Without bending the knees even, you can kind of shift your pelvis to the left by pressing into the feet a certain way. And then you can do the same to the right. And you're essentially wagging your tail. It's a small movement, perhaps. You're welcome to bend your knees to make this happen. It gets a little more fun if you do bend your knees. Feels a little bit more like that dance move we were doing earlier. But play with what does it feel like to shift with straight legs, with a little bend, maybe with a lot of bend. And if your hands are on your thighs, that's awesome. You're swinging and swaying and swaggering, perhaps. If your hands are closer to the floor or on the floor and your knees are bent, we actually call this Scorpion Pose. So it's essentially a squat with your hands on the floor. Now, sometimes you'll see pictures of people on the cover of Yoga Journal with their arms crossed, making it a little bit more dramatic, which is very Scorpio type energy, but you can simply tap into this feeling of your scorpion self in this shape. Again, if having the hands on the floors feels too low, bring them up. And then for any of you who want a little extra challenge, see if you can lift your heels up off the ground. You're keeping the knees bent, but lifting one or maybe both heels and balancing in that way. Are you having fun yet? If not, try something different. And then lower the heels, lift the hips to straighten your legs out, back to your standing wide angle forward fold for a moment. And then with the bend in the knees or maybe the hands on the hips, rise up slowly to stand. Walk the feet together, shake it out. Are we very aware of this whole part of ourselves now, hopefully? Okay. Shift to the front of your mat so you can take a big step back with your left foot. Warrior one. Let's do a little something different. This probably feels very different energetically, right? Now we're long ways on the mat. We're facing forward. We're going to reach the arms up overhead. Not so Scorpio energy, but that's okay. We're trying to balance the body out. And from here, see if maybe there's a little back bend available in the upper back. If it feels more steady to have your hands on the hips, you can feel the pelvis there too. Keep them there. And maybe gaze at the horizon. If it's not disorienting, you can look up to the top of a window. And then return to your starting place and then lean forward slightly. So you're kind of making an angle from the left heel behind you to the hips and pelvis, to the shoulders and the crown of your head. Feel the thighs working. Beautiful. And then step together to the front of your mat with both knees bent, chair pose. Feel free to move the arms. And then switch sides. So you're going to shift the weight to your left foot, take a big step back with your right, lift the head up over the pelvis and belly. Warrior one, other side. Hopefully this gives a bit of a stretch through the front side of the right leg. A little bit of an arch. If you like, hands can stay on the hips or whatever's comfortable. And then return to your starting position. Now lean forward slightly. If you can breathe and smile, you're doing it right. Nice. And from here, reach for the floor and take a big step back to tabletop or downward facing dog. And then lower the knees to the ground. Take the hips back any amount for child's pose. And as you breathe, given all that awareness of our low belly, pelvis, and perhaps inner legs and thighs, notice if you feel your breath move into that space in your body. All right, from here, we're going to make our way into Pigeon Pose. Now, there are several ways to do pigeon. You could come back up into downward facing dog and do the more classic or active pigeon. Send one knee forward towards that right hand, your right knee rather, and lengthen out through the left leg. This is what my body wants to do. But if you get there and you change your mind, or you're like, nope, that's not really for me, you can roll onto your back and do the reclined variation where you cross your right ankle on top of the left thigh, making a number 4. And then either stay here or reach for the back of the leg with the hands and rest your head down. Sometimes the head doesn't rest very easily. So if you have a pillow or a blanket, bring it underneath your head. Feel free to explore or change your mind. And for those of you in the more active pigeon, as I call it, spend a moment with your head and chest up before you fold. Can you feel that whole area of the pelvis close to the floor here, as well as some of those stretchy bits on the front of the left hip flexors? And then feel free to fold. You don't have to, you can stay right as you are. Take a few more moments here. And then if you're upright in the active pigeon, walk your hands back underneath your shoulders, curl your back toes under, and perhaps escort your right leg back to downward dog. If you're reclined and you want to do reclined on the other side, you can stay as you are, uncross the legs, give them a little shake, and then set up for the other side. So if you're in downward dog, the left knee might come forward towards the left hand. Your right leg will stay long behind you. Sometimes there's some extra room to crawl the right knee back. And then perhaps stay tall for a moment. Notice how your pelvis is arranged on the floor without any judgment. And then if and when you'd like, you can lower and get closer to the floor. Remember, the left and right sides can be very different. So if on this side it wants to look different, maybe come down and try the reclined version of the shape. When you're ready to make your way out of the shape from the active version, steady yourself onto your hands and escort yourself back to downward dog. If you're on the floor on your back, after unwinding, perhaps try bridge pose with the feet flat, knees bent, press up. Something where both sides of the body are working together in an active way. So bridge pose can feel that way, downward dog can feel that way. Also, if from downward dog you lower the knees and then walk your hands closer, an inch or two towards your knees so you're closer together, but then hover the knees just an inch. I feel like this, for me, it helps me feel like my whole pelvis is kind of knitted together after being split apart in the movement I just did before. I'll change the camera angle so you can see what I mean. So from hands and knees, normally hands and knees, I feel good with my hands here, but for this, I walk the hands in closer, curl my toes under, and then lift my knees. And even though it feels like my arms are efforting, I also feel this sort of sense of things coming together across my low back and pelvis. You can try that. Lift and lower a few times. And then make your way to sit. Extend the legs out long and shake them out. And we'll do a seated twist. So option one is to bring your left knee in and place the foot inside the leg. You can also cross it over. This usually gets some more sensation in the hip. We just did pigeon, so you might not feel the need or the desire. And some of you have bodies that let you bend your bottom leg and sit back down. It's okay if the foot lifts off the floor when you do that, that's fine, but it may not feel good or possible for some of us. So a couple of options for you there. And then hold the knee with your right hand and spin your chest to the left. Your other hand can come behind you to support. And then unwind. If you have your bottom leg bent, unwind it so that it's straight again in front of you. Shift your left foot to the inside of the leg and let your knee fall out to the right. You're always welcome to bring some padding underneath if that feels best here. And then fold over the extended leg for Janu Shirshasana. Forward fold. And then walk your hands back up and switch legs. So left leg goes long, right knee comes in. You decide option one, option two, or maybe option three. Remember, it doesn't have to look the same on this side, especially if your body is feeling differently over here. This actually feels good on this side. Then hold the knee with the left hand, turn the chest to the right. Any amount. Remember, it's not going for big twist, it's going for some sensation and the energetics of the twist. As you're ready, unwind. Unwind the legs so you can straighten out the left one and bring the right foot inside with the knee out. And then prepare for the forward fold over the left leg. And then walk your hands back up and extend your left leg long. Maybe shake out the legs, or if you have that blanket or pillow to sit up on for a seated forward fold with both legs. Now you're welcome to take this wide. We did quite a bit with the inner legs already, but sometimes it feels different when you're in a different position. So you could take the wide angle, you could take butterfly again, or keep the legs out in front of you with any distance between your feet and fold over the legs in that way. Notice how as you fold, your pelvis really is in charge of this folding motion. We sometimes think we're actually hinging at the back, but really the pelvis is tilting, allowing for the back to fold in this way. As you're ready, walk yourself back up and slide down onto your back. Draw the knees in, and with one hand on each knee, draw circles with the knees in the air to massage your low back and sacrum on the ground. And go a few times in both directions. And then bring the hands to the backs of the thighs. Let your knees go wide. Dead bug shape. The dead bug. Sounds like Scorpio to me. I would imagine that if I saw a scorpion, I might initially freak out and wish he were dead, right? So here's your dead bug, scorpion. If you prefer to turn this into a happy baby, reach for the feet. Make it a little bit more playful or add movement. And if there are any final movements your body's craving, I know mine wants a bridge pose, explore here. Some of you may have already done bridge earlier, so you may feel complete. Otherwise, bring your feet to the floor and lift the hips a few times. Notice the pelvis moving, tilting, changing shape as you lift and lower. Feel the strength through the legs, the torso, the buttocks, the back. If there's a little twisty motion your body wants, give yourself that. And then set yourself up for relaxation. If you'd like, reclined butterfly is my recommendation tonight, but with some support underneath the outer thighs. So if you have 2 blocks or 2 pillows or 2 rolled up blankets you can place on either side, this way your legs can relax, feeling the support of the blocks or your pillows. If instead you'd rather keep your legs out long, that's fine. And if you do have a blanket to cover your low belly and pelvis and hips, we gave them a lot of attention, and it's nice to keep that area warm, even if the rest of you feels comfortable. Feel yourself heavy and resting on the earth. Maybe your hands are at your low belly, on your pelvic area. When I think of Scorpio, the classic Scorpio holiday happens during Scorpio season at Halloween time. It's very much a sign, a zodiac sign and energy associated with death and rebirth. If any of you have friends with a lot of Scorpio energy, they're the ones that like to crash and then rise up like a phoenix again after. But at the opposite sign, as I mentioned earlier, at the opposite end of the zodiac from Scorpio is Taurus, the spring energy, where we are now in Taurus season, this rebirthing time. And so perhaps in your awareness, something comes to mind of death and rebirth, this cycle of life that we are all a part of. So much of the last year has meant an ending, a proverbial dying of certain things, and also now a rebirthing, a reawakening, a change. And so as some of these faces or places, activities, people come across your awareness, be with them, be with the feelings and sensations that accompany your thoughts. Notice what's dying or ending for you in your life or shifting. Notice what has new energy, that spring rebirth or awakening. And it's okay if no answers come. Maybe it's just images. Maybe it's questions. And allow yourself to drift, resting in these thoughts and feelings, resting on the earth. Notice yourself resting against the earth. And begin to stir ever so slightly, making some movements. And eventually make your way onto your side and curl up there for a moment. We often refer to this as fetus pose, but instead of worrying about the image here, feel the feeling of yourself closed up, resting, comfortable near the earth, contracted perhaps a little bit. And as you get ready to come up to sit and open yourself up to the rest of your day, the rest of your week, the rest of whatever's next, what are you opening to? What are you reawakening to, awakening to? And it could just be your awakening to dinner. That's okay. It could also be just a subtle shift in energy. Whoop, there's the birdie clock telling me it's time. I'm so grateful for your presence and your practice today, and I hope this exploration and mini dance practice has served you and makes you smile. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.